Hey, do you think that bodybuilding is just for guys with a lot of time on their hand, young men, or steroid users? If so, you might want to reconsider that. In fact, bodybuilding might be one of the most effective ways that guys in their 40s and beyond can keep their joints healthy while retaining lean muscle and keeping their energy and vitality high. In today's video, you'll learn how classic bodybuilding principles like balance and structural integrity can help you to not only build muscle, increase your energy, optimize your hormones, but also do so in a way that doesn't wreck your joints. Hey guys, Aaron Kubitz, Functional Aesthetics of Eau Claire, blending science and innovation to help busy men in their 40s build muscle, shed fat, and perform better in their lives inside and outside the gym. I just turned 40, actually just turned 41 a couple of days ago, and my joints feel better at 41 than they did at 25. I attribute this to a combination of changes in my diet and also the way that I train. So when you think of bodybuilding, what comes to mind? Steroids, bro science, spray on tan, vanity? Well, bodybuilding is actually one of the most effective ways that men over 40 can retain or build lean muscle, keep their hormones optimized, and keep body fat low, all while protecting the health of their joints. So over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be sharing some of the unique benefits of bodybuilding and how it is uniquely positioned to help men in their 40s, 50s, and beyond continue to live their most healthy, vibrant lives. Things like hormone optimization, structural integrity, joint health, being healthy, looking healthy because you are healthy. Contrary to popular opinion, the way your body looks, now some bodybuilders, let's say if you're taking chemical enhancements, if you are depleting yourself of certain nutrients, trying to get to a certain level of body fat, especially for competitions, that can be healthy. But a well-balanced, proportioned, muscular body doesn't just look good, it's healthy because of that. Our bodies are not meant to be unattractive, to be fat, to be scrawny, to be atrophied either, right? They're meant to be strong, powerful. Just look at, all the animals out there, right? You don't see like horses walking around most of the time unless they are sick, right? All atrophied, too much body fat, right? Lions, tigers, squirrels, all these things. Things out in nature, when things are in their natural environment, they're eating a quality diet, they are moving naturally in nature, they tend to have good-looking bodies, aesthetic-looking bodies. And so the same thing with our bodies. The human body should be optimized. The more optimized it is, the more you train it, the better the health of that body is going to be. And in order to achieve that aesthetic, to achieve that level of muscular development, that level of athleticism, you have to be feeding the body with proper nutrients. The body has to be healthy. A healthy body will not be able to assimilate nutrients properly in order to be able to build that kind of a physique. Today's video, I'm going to be focusing on the structural integrity and joint health aspects of bodybuilding, or the benefits of doing that. Now, as with any endeavor, how you go about doing it can affect that. But at its core, bodybuilding is focused on symmetry and a combination of having balanced musculature, fully developing the muscles, so getting a level of size that allows you to fully showcase the musculature on your body, and then having sufficiently low body fat so that you can also see that. And so these three things, particularly that first one, the focus on symmetry, even though it's not the primary goal of the bodybuilder to do this, the downstream effects is that it helps with the structural integrity. You may have heard me talk about this in a previous video where I was talking about how all the joints in the body stack up, should be stacked one on top of the other, and that you have, for example, in your elbow joint, you have the biceps and you have the triceps. When the biceps is flexing, the triceps is stretching out, and you should be having even tension and strength between opposing muscle groups. Most commonly, what will happen is that people who spend a lot of time at a desk, people who spend a lot of time driving in a car for work, they oftentimes have a little bit of a forward head posture. This is a result of their upper back muscles starting to become weak and their chest muscles becoming shortened, which brings you forward like this. Your SCM muscles here, if you grab right here, sternocleidomastoid, right? Attaches down on sternum here, comes up here, or the sternum, the clavicle, and then the mastoid process up here, and that's why it's called the sternocleidomastoid muscle, or the SCM muscle. And so those muscles, their function is to basically make your chin go back like this. And so when you're like this, these ones are weak and unused, and then your cervical extensors back here are getting overused. So those are some classic examples of having structural integrity problems. You, just like a house or a skyscraper or something like that, if the foundation is off, you're like the Leaning Tower of Pisa off at an angle, and then all the structures above that have to bear extra stress and strain due to the fact that rather than being balanced like this, now you're like this, and so everything has to work harder to support that structure. Now, because bodybuilding is so focused on having a balanced physique, i.e. having no imbalances between the different muscles of the body, and they do this purely from an aesthetic standpoint of how the body looks, right? But in the pursuit of aesthetics, you're also creating that joint integrity. So you're not going to see a bodybuilder who's walking around like this with his shoulders rounded, right? They're walking around like this, right? Chest is up, shoulders are down and back. They built up the back of the shoulder here. You've built up your back muscles even to the chest muscles. You built up the triceps even to the biceps. You have a strong muscular legs to support all that weight up here and keeping that waist smaller. Now that might be the one area where it's not quite as functional with bodybuilding, is that you will notice that oftentimes with strong men, even if they are leaner like Mariusz Pudzianowski, where he has a six-pack, he has visible abs, but he has a very thick torso. Reason being, when you're lifting these heavy stones and stuff like that, you need to have all that musculature there to help protect your spine. And so bodybuilding, that might be the one side, downside of that, where in the interest of trying to keep your waist as small as possible, you might not be as structurally sound. Now, if you never plan to be lifting huge odd objects and stuff, then that's not necessarily a big problem. But I figured I would point that out for you. So I have a ebook where I think it was called Bulletproof Shoulders. Bulletproof Shoulders for Men Over 40. You can actually look at that. I think I have the link for that ebook in the description below if you're interested in checking that out. But in that thing, I go over the different planes of the body, where you have the sagittal plane, which is movement front to back. You have the frontal plane, where you're moving side to side like this. You have the transverse plane, which is everything rotational here. And then you have circumduction, which is a combination of going through all those planes of motion. Now, your shoulder is one of the only joints, if not the only joint in the body, that can perform the circumduction. Therefore, it is highly important that your shoulder joint have balance between all the muscles that are working in those different planes of motion, so that the head of your upper arm can sit appropriately in your shoulder socket, in that glenohumeral joint, so that you're not causing tendons to fray, to rub up against bones, because that upper arm bone is moving out of alignment, and thus causing those tendons that are attaching to it from the muscles to rub on things, and you're ending up getting shoulder injuries. Okay, so that's one aspect of what we mean by structural integrity. And with the bodybuilder, since his main goal is not to lift as much weight as possible, his main goal is to have the most balanced physique that looks good from every angle, he naturally keeps his joints healthy for the most part. Now, this is not to say that, and this is a good place to segue into joint-specific health, because structural integrity plays into joint health, although it is not the entirety of it, because there's other factors that play into joint health too, such as your nutrition, right? And then also the kind of lifting that you're doing. So lifting heavy weights like a power lifter, so a power lifter, their goal is to lift as much weight as they possibly can, right? A bodybuilder, bodybuilders will often get quite strong, but their primary goal is not to be as strong as possible. Their primary goal is to create that balanced physique, right? And the strength is a byproduct of the training to build more muscle size and shape, right? So, as I had said in another video, I don't know if I did this on Facebook or if I had done this in a previous YouTube video, but I had been curious to know, like, because we often hear that lifting really heavy can be hard on your joints, just like we hear that doing a lot of running can be really hard on your joints. I often feel that it is more having to do with structural integrity issues and nutritional issues that are to blame for people who are doing a lot of running or lifting heavy later on down the road getting joint problems. Because lifting heavy can actually support the health of your joints, particularly your cartilage, which came as a shock to me because you're thinking, oh, all that compressive force and stuff, you're just wearing, grinding out that cartilage, right? But it's actually the compressive force that helps to bring nutrients into that cartilage because it doesn't have a blood supply. This is something called mechanotransduction, whereby when you compress that cartilage, it helps to bring more nutrients into the cartilage, nourishing it and making it a healthier tissue. So your muscles, they have blood, they have blood supplies, veins, capillaries, etc., that bring nutrients in, take waste products out, and that's how your muscles can repair pretty fast. Your tendons and your ligaments and your cartilage don't have any blood supply going to them, and so they rely on things like synovial fluid and also this mechanotransduction for the cartilage to help bring the nutrients in to make it healthier, a better joint, right? With that being said, if you are constantly doing heavy lifting without adequate rest between heavy sessions, right? I've said this in another video too, that top lifters, they're not maxing out every time they go to the gym. So for example, let's say you're going along and you've been working really hard for a long time to get to a 225 pound bench press, right? That's a that's a first benchmark that a lot of guys are looking for when they get to the gym. It means that, provided you're under 200 pounds, yet you are an officially strong individual if you can bench press 225 pounds. Now, once you get to 225, doesn't mean that you're going to stay in every single session after that, every single time you bench press after that, that you're going to be bench pressing 225. Elite powerlifters, runners, whatever it is, they're not always doing their top performance every time they get to the gym. Instead, what you want to be having is something called periodization, whereby you're climbing up the hill, you're steadily increasing your volume, so reps and sets, how much total work you're doing, or the intensity, the total amount of weight on that bar, over a period of time, and you hit a peak, right? So maybe do the competition or something, you do the race, you do the powerlifting meet, you hit that peak, and then you go back down, and you hit a new low. But this time, your starting point is slightly higher than your previous starting point. So that low is a little bit higher than that previous one. And you're building off that one and coming back up. And then your peak, hopefully, is higher than the previous peak. But if you get to this peak and you just try to stay at a peak all the time, eventually you burn yourself out. And especially because heavy lifting is very taxing on your central nervous system, right? So your central nervous system, so like your musculoskeletal system, the muscles and stuff like that, and the joints, they need time to repair, but your nervous system, because as I've talked about in other videos, strength is a skill, right? The nervous system, that mind-muscle connection to be able to take all the muscle fibers in all the muscles in that targeted area and fire them, and so that they deliver their force all together rather than one here, one here, one here. When that happens, that is a function of your nervous system coordinating that effort. Therefore, when you're doing all this really heavy lifting all the time, it's very fatiguing for your central nervous system. And so you can get the symptoms of the burnout, listlessness, and stuff like that if you are doing that too much. Furthermore, when you start getting into doing those heavy lifts, when you are in that fatigued state, your concentration isn't as good, right? Your stabilizer muscles might also be fatigued. Therefore, you can't perform the exercises with a proper form anymore, or even if you are doing with form, maybe you lose concentration and you miss the lift and you end up injuring yourself. So that's the instance where chronic heavy lifting could be detrimental to your joints. Now, same thing goes though for any style or any rep range that you're doing too much of, right? So, for example, the calisthenics, if you're doing high reps of things, or if you're doing the muscular endurance training, which is the pillar number one of my hybrid strength program, 16-week course for guys over 40 to help them build 5 to 10 pounds of muscle and shed 15 to 20 plus pounds of body fat. In that program, pillar number one is muscular endurance training. And this helps you to build up a strong foundation, just like, if you've ever run cross country when you were back in school, you always start out with that aerobic base. You do a lot of long, slow runs, you build up that mileage getting longer and longer, and then as the season progresses, you start adding more intensity, speed work, intervals, hills, things like that. And then you're building off that base, and maybe you're not doing as much mileage and stuff, but you started out, and that's why we're doing that same thing with for pillar number one, muscular endurance training. But if you guys who are strong, they oftentimes like to focus on lifting heavy weights all the time, right? Guys who have great endurance, they'll often get their, sense of pride or satisfaction from, how many reps can I crank out of push-ups, right? And as a result, sometimes the form goes by the wayside in the interest of being able to perform more reps. And when this happens, you are no longer controlling your shoulder blade motion, right? You're not stable at keeping your core nice and tight while you're doing it. You can end up getting issues in the back. The shoulder joints aren't in proper alignment anymore. Maybe you start getting rotator cuff issues. And then if you're only doing push-ups and planks and things like that, and you're not doing anything for the opposite side of the body, this too, even if you're not using heavy weights, can lead to damaged joints over time. And then also, both with heavy lifting and with a super high endurance training, if you're doing that kind of training all the time and never cycling between different kinds of training, then you're going to be setting yourself up for injuries down the road. So with the heavy lifting, maybe you end up getting injured in the middle of a set. With the super high endurance type training, you risk developing tendonitis, carpal tunnel, and things like that because you're not allowing for the adaptation to take place. You're always in the breakdown phase. Actually, this morning I was taking a walk with my wife and I was talking about everything in nature. You have the Chinese, symbol, the yin-yang symbol, right? Where you have the yang, which is extroverted like masculine energy. You have the yin, receiving, parasympathetic, right? I like to think about it in terms of the nervous system. Yang is like sympathetic, fight or flight, right? Yin is like parasympathetic, rest and digest. And if you're always redlining it in the yang, or in that sympathetic state of fight or flight, you're going to fry your nervous system. You're going to burn yourself out. You get this chronic fatigue, right? You can have problems, right? On the other hand, if you're not doing enough, you end up atrophying. You end up getting high blood sugar, high blood lipids, all these other problems from being too sedentary. So ideally what you want to have is a balance between the two. You expend yourself, you recover yourself. You expend, you recover. So the same thing goes with your lifting. There's many different styles of lifting. In my hybrid strength program, we have muscular endurance, old school bodybuilding, we have powerlifting, and then the pinnacle of it all is speed, power, and agility training. Okay? And you don't want to be training all of those all the time. So what we do is we phase through them. And then in some workouts, we do a combination of all of them in the same workout. So the best combination for your longevity, from a longevity standpoint, to be able to do this in your 60s, 70s, and beyond, is to rotate and cycle through this. Use the muscular endurance to help you recover from the heavy lifting. Use a hypertrophy to give you a stronger, more solid base for the heavy lifting. Do the speed, power, and agility to maintain that balance and quickness that we often lose with old age. So guys, this is a perfect opportunity now to bring that up. If you'd like to learn more about hybrid strength training, I do have that program that I talked about before. 16-week program designed specifically for men over 40 to help them to build their first 5 to 10 pounds of muscle, drop 15 to 20 pounds of body fat in that 16-week period. It's combined with synergistic nutrition as well. Synergistic in that synergy meaning that the sum where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, right? So when you combine proper eating, like your eating matches the kind of training that you're doing, right? So if you're doing a marathon training, how you eat is going to be different than when you're trying to cut down to 4% body fat for a bodybuilding show, right? So making sure that your eating is appropriate to the kind of training that you're doing, create that synergy. And then also, the last piece of, if we're talking about joint health here, making sure that the foods that you're eating are helping to support the health of your joints as well, so that you are having that structural integrity and that joint integrity piece too, because joint health isn't just one thing, it's the combination of multiple things. So if you are a guy over 40, you are looking to drop that 15 to 20 pounds of body fat, you don't have maybe more than 20 to 30 minutes per day to get and do some strength training. Maybe all you can do is train at home. Then I urge you to go ahead and check out that link in the comments below. I got a link to my calendar. You can schedule a call, free consultation, 30 minutes. We'll talk about what your situation is and see if hybrid strength training is a good option for you. Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. And if you enjoyed this content, if you're finding some value from it, feel free to subscribe by hitting the button in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. And until next time, I'll see you all for more health and fitness information.